Hey guys, so recently there was like a gotcha interview between, what was it, Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz, and everyone was immediately criticizing Ted Cruz because Ted Cruz is pretty heavily funded by AIPAC, which is Jewish influence, and Tucker Carlson did like an ambush style gotcha interview of him, and during that interview Tucker Carlson basically made it a point of saying, you don't know the difference between Sunni and Shia? And it got me thinking, like, from a Western point of view, what actually is the difference between Sunni and Shia? Like, if we're looking at it from the West's culture, laws, norms, all that sort of thing, what is actually the difference between a Sunni and a Shia? So the point is basically a ton of liberal, elitist leftists attempt to add like an extra, what would you say, dimension of nuance by saying there's a major difference between Sunni and Shia, and a lot of people who just see Muslim don't quite understand that. But I'm going to make the argument that just seeing Muslim is kind of like accurate enough for our assessment, right? Like just okay. So we'll get into it. We'll get into like how it's different and the geopolitics of it and all that sort of thing. So when evaluating, let's say, a cult like Islam and the different sects of the cult like Sunni and Shia, let's just go through some standard questions that we would use to evaluate any cult that like at least appears to be superficially violent, right? Alright, so here's just like a normal line of questioning you can use to try to differentiate the two of them. You can just ask Rock, which Islamic sect is more pedophilic with child marriage? Like just, if not completely eliminating child marriage, well, supporting a cult that supports child marriage, you could at least support the side that supports child marriage least, like a lesser of two evil things, just so you're not directly aiding a pedophilic cult. Turns out both of them do child marriage. They basically think it's okay since Muhammad did it. So, in terms of the West, just looking at it, both support pedophilic, child marriage, rape. So, that pretty much right there tells you can't morally support either Sunni or Shia. They're both fucked. It's unacceptable to support either one or to present either one, basically, over the other, and especially over places like Israel. Israel has its own issues with pedophilia and stuff like that, with the rabbis, the moils, that suck circumcision dicks of children to stop bleeding. But that's way less, right? In Islam, it's like a serious issue. It's since the year 1900, it's nearly 1 billion child brides. Even if you're assuming like a high percentage of these moils do it, it's still like only in the millions over like 100 years compared to 900 million, which is, but still, Israel not that great, especially moils, but moils are relatively rare. It's like a sect within Israel, so you can't immediately paint all Jews as pedophiles. Well, like you can with Muslims, pretty much. Okay, but pushing forward, you can't use child marriage to distinguish between Sunni and Shia. Which is fucked. Okay, alright, so, we'll trust the left to, back a side that believes in pedophilia and child marriage, especially given their recent championing of, John Money with all the trans shit. They're quite sus. Okay, anyway, pushing forward. can we maybe distinguish the behaviour between the two to identify a lesser evil about how many Christians they kill or persecute? The answer, no. They both kill and persecute Christians within their states, and they both fund terrorist groups that kill and persecute Christians in other states, abroad, terrorism, that sort of thing. Not just Christians, Hindus, the whole lot. Any non-Muslim, basically. It's about at this point that you can realise the projected depth of the leftist interpretation of the Sunni and Shia divide by, suicidal leftist supporters of Islam was only ever really cosmetic. Like, already in two major ways, the divide between them and how we just overall see Muslims is pretty irrelevant in like two major ways. Oh, they still got child marriage, it's still horrible, and they still kill Christians and shit abroad because of their religion. Like, there's no like real differentiation between the two. So, like, my third point, alright, okay, pushing forward, they're both fucked in those areas. How about just terrorism, global terrorism? Like, does one support global terrorism and the other not support global terrorism? Does one engage more in it politically, that sort of deal? Turns out both engage with terrorism and terrorist attacks against civilians on pretty big scales. Okay, so far, Sunni and Shia, they are both into pedophile child marriage, they're both into killing Christians abroad and within their own countries, soft ethnically cleansing them, repressing them, and they're both into global terrorism. Okay, alright. Righto, so 3 from 3, where we have failed to distinguish Sunni and Shia in any meaningful way from like a basic Western conception of Islam, right? Like, in any meaningful way. They both support child marriage, which the West abhors. They both kill Christians, which the West abhors, and they both support global terrorism, killing of innocents in order to spread terror and push Islam. I'm not seeing a real big difference between the two so far, but anyway, let's crack on. Let's crack on and see if we can find any more to add any, let's say, depth. Let's attempt to steelman the suicidal leftist distinction between Sunni and Shia globally. Right, so in terms of violence and pedophilia, they're both pretty fucking horrible. How about in terms of secularism? Like, is one less religiously motivated to pursue these to the detriment of everything else? Is one more secular than the other, or can one be reasoned with more than the other? I asked Grok this, and it said no, neither of them are secular. You can make a case one is more secular than the other, but you cannot make the case that they are secular, either of them. One of them worships and grants political authority based on the lineage of Muhammad through Muhammad's cousin. The other one grants authority to basically like the Islamic version of a priesthood through imams and interpretation of the Quran. The last one is obviously more secular because it gives a little bit of latitude in terms of political interpretation, but both of them are not secular at all. Both of them are deeply theological. Both of them are theocracies. So, no, you're dealing with Islam, like, at its core, either way. Yeah. So what are the major differences between the two? Well, basically they're majorities in different regions, and they fucking absolutely hate each other, and they're played off each other for demographic control, basically. Their terrorist groups are different. You will have Sunni and Shia backed terrorist groups, Mind you, there's a little bit of overlap there, depending on the enemy of the terrorist group. You might find, some Sunni states backing Shia militias, depending on the enemy, supplying them weapons, stuff like that. But there's not really a distinction between the two of them, really. Yeah, yeah.
Escort the payload to the train.
So, like, beyond that singular point that they fucking hate each other and they fought wars against each other, like, at least with their terrorist proxies, killing each other's civilians, that sort of shit. Why is the difference necessary? Like, the main reason why the difference would be necessary, if we're at war with them, would be to play them off against each other, which is what the US and other nations do to a certain degree, and have funded these groups based on their goals at the time. This is where the leftist claim comes in that the US funds certain terrorist groups when they're fighting other terrorist groups and shit like that. But if the US funds and supplies weapons to a terrorist group for one battle against, let's say, another terrorist group, and then after that battle, said shit terrorist group then decides to kill a bunch of Christians and stuff, you can't then say that the US deliberately funded a massacre of Christians. Like, leftists love to sort of draw the distinction between the two, right? Mind you, it's pretty irresponsible to give a terrorist group guns in the fucking first place, especially given that the aftermath of their battle with the other terrorist group is going to be, we will likely massacre minorities in our own countries. But it is what it is, right? If you're gonna fucking go to war with these fucking people and you want to play them off against each other, as would be intelligent to do, basically get them to kill each other, keep them divided so they never form, let's say, like a big orc war. They remain two disparate political factions and keep fighting against one another. And like, they kill other sects of Muslims as well. Like in Syria, the Alawites were getting, which is like another sect of Muslim, but they were getting fucking massacred by like former fucking, what was he, Taliban? I can't remember who was Taliban. There's like fucking three different ones. Julani, whatever his name is. There's like fucking three separate different ones. They've all got different backers. They all hate each other. They all kill each other. They all kill civilians. Like, that you would try to make a distinction between two groups that in their spare time kill civilians, and you would attempt to, demonize the US for the shitty state of their country. I mean, it's just like a fucking shitty leftist ploy. And you can't even make the case that, let's say, it's only because of the terrorism and warfare of these two terrorist states that these two regions are economically underdeveloped, backward, and have to resort to horrible cultural practices like child marriage in order to economically survive, right? No. When Islamic rule takes over, those countries aren't any more successful. The only successful Islamic countries are the ones that have oil and don't piss off the US and don't go to war with the US and try to maintain stability because the US needs their oil. Like, those are the only Islamic countries that can maintain peace for any serious length of time. Like, they will always attack their neighbors. Like, look at Pakistan, for example. Pakistan with fucking India. It literally could not stop itself. Like, it would lose a war. It has lost wars to India in the past. It literally could not stop itself funding terrorist groups to go into India to kill Hindus in like an ethnic cleansing manner in order to try to obtain some sort of demographic majority in India to install Sharia, the creeping Sharia. Like, it literally could not stop itself doing that against a superior power in India, which could have fucking wiped Pakistan off the face of the earth. Has won, what, 1-2, drew 1 of the 3 Kashmir wars, nearly started a 4th Kashmir war with that terrorist attack in Pakistan. Like, these countries, they're all shit. That, like, it does your head in. And then these fucking leftists want to draw some sort of distinction between Sunnis and Shias. Besides the fact that they kill each other as well, and we're funding separate groups of them to kill each other in some instances. What's the major difference between the two? They're both fucked. They're both fucked Islamic shitholes that fund terrorism, kill Christians, and fucking rape little girls through child marriage. What's this distinction? What, like, it's like a difference without a distinction, right? So? Oh, you don't know the difference between a Sunni and a Shia? You don't know the demographics of your country? I mean, I guess socio-politically, if you're funding certain terrorist groups against other terrorist groups and you want to coup one of these countries, I guess maybe you want to know? Like, if you're funding the opposite terrorist group and your terrorist group's going to get wiped out. But at the same time, so? Like, they're disposable, the terrorist groups that you're funding. So what if they get wiped out? Like, it makes no sense. And it's just like, okay, they've thrown this tiny little bit of complexity into the equation to try and distract you from the fact that Islam's fucking still garbage. Still garbage, still warlike, still starts wars, still tries to start wars with terrorism, funds bunches of terrorist proxies, destabilizes whole regions, wants to get nuclear weapons. When they have got nuclear weapons, they've done horrible things with them, like arm North Korea to continue the only, Soviet-era fully communist state. Stability enough not to collapse from without, because now it has nuclear weapons and it can't face any economic threat from without, let's say. Like, if you have sort of like the Berlin Wall as an example, where people could pass from east to west through the gate systems to visit each other. You have that, and you have the direct one-to-one comparison between communism and capitalism, and the capitalist side's doing fucking way better. Like, you can't have that in North Korea because they've got the demilitarized zone, and any act of aggression could be escalated. Any act of aggression towards the territory of North Korea could be escalated into nuclear war. Congratulations, Islam's responsible for that. Pakistan got nukes. Pakistan gave nukes to North Korea straight away. Alright, cool. Islam's responsible for that last time they got nukes. What are they going to do if Iran gets nukes? Like, Iran, who's already like the head of radical Islam globally, kind of, is already the biggest funder of terrorism, $700 million, has 10 plus proxies. All those proxies kill civilians, all those proxies kill Christians. Like, okay, you give them a nuke, you're just granting them stability to continue their proxy terrorism, except now they're more of a threat if let's say you want to escalate action against them in order to stop their proxy terrorism. Like, the leftist arguments here are fucking stupid. And then you have Dave Smith making a comment like, oh, Israel's worse than Iran, just in sheer numbers of dead children. No. Like, what? Israel, 50% responsible for its guerrilla proxy war in fucking Gaza, where Hamas is deliberately trying to maximize civilian dead. What's that, 13 to 18,000 kids? And a lot of those would be combatants as well that are under the age of 18, like 17-year-olds with AKs or whatever, because, you know, Islamic people tend to use child soldiers. And then you're going to compare that to, what was it, 50,000 kids during the Iran-Iraq war, like, used directly in, like, suicidal, unarmed human wave attacks against Iraq. Like, the comparison's ridiculous. To even imply that Israel's somehow more evil just based on the war in Gaza. Like, no, obviously not. Unless he's trying to make some sort of argument about the blockade or the Intifada. Like, my interpretation of the Intifada is it was basically Islamic intolerance that caused that. They were offered a deal, which they turned down because they didn't want to deal with the security restrictions. Because, you know, Muslims tend to love to kill Jews, in case you didn't realise. They love to bloody shoot them and blow them up. They turned that down, and then a Jewish official went to an area of shared religious importance, and because Islamic people are intolerant to that sort of thing, they fucking hate Jews, and they hate Jews going near their sacred areas, they started to riot, and, like, the riots were violent. They were throwing stones and shit. The riots were put down violently by Israelis, because the Israelis don't fuck around, especially when it comes to Islamic violence. And then the Islamic people then started to do terrorist bombings and killings of Israelis and Israeli civilians at checkpoints and stuff like that. And just bombings in Tel Aviv, just to kill civilians, Jewish civilians. And that included, by the way, at least 15 uses of child suicide bombings, by the way. Like, Palestinians deliberately using children under 18 that were radicalized in order, like, just trick them into wearing bomb vests just to kill, like, Israeli civilians and Israeli soldiers. Like, that's horrible. That's worse than anything Israel's ever done. Like, it's fucking insane. Alright, so you got that. In order to combat the killings of civilians and the suicide bombings and the attacks on checkpoints and stuff like that, Israel set up a bunch of blockades and a bunch of checkpoints to stop all the movement of people and the movement of arms and weaponry and bombs and stuff between checkpoints. And you know what? That fucking worked. It stopped the fucking shootings and the bombings. Like, that's the second Intifada for you. That's, like, what happened and how it was resolved. And then you, like, and then you've got all the people stating, oh no, it's repression of innocent Gazans. The innocent Gazans weren't stopping the shootings or the suicide bombings or anything like that during the second Intifada. They weren't stopping the use of child suicide bombers during the second Intifada. They weren't doing shit. Okay? But anyway, back to the point. The difference between Sunni and Shia. There's no difference in the Western eye. Like, you have to look to see the distinction between the two. Like, you have to look pretty hard. And to act like there's some huge difference between Sunni and Shia in their actions, in the outcomes of their actions, and the outcomes of their states. No. No. There's no difference. One's maybe a little bit more organised. They're both still fucking horrible. Like, the only difference would be geopolitically. The terrorist groups you are arming to combat and destabilize the states in order to keep them infighting. That is the only difference between the two of them. To act like there's some sort of we owe any loyalty to either of these terrorist groups because we funded them to fight the other one. We don't. Like, of course we don't. They're fucking disposable terrorist groups we've armed and funded to use as cheap soldiers to kill the other one. Like, we wouldn't then owe them allegiance. Like, what are you fucking talking about? And, like, especially after the battles we've funded them for, especially after they've fought them, they've then either massacred civilians or massacred Christians or massacred, like, any other group in order to try and spread their influence. Like, why would we owe them allegiance? We're using them as mercenaries. You don't then owe allegiance to mercenaries, which are fucking horrible people committing horrible war crimes that for some reason always get ignored by the UN, which is fucking interesting, especially when you're like Dave Smith and you try to make appeals to the authority and the what would you say, expertise of the UN, when, you know, just all the time they just fucking ignore all of these horrible Islamic war crimes, all the beheadings in the Congo, all the killings of Christians in Africa. Like, they only seem to ever focus on Israel for some reason. Like, fair enough, you probably don't have a whole lot of influence in a country that is using terrorist proxies to kill its own civilians, but why would you then try to spread influence within the UN to countries that are dealing with said terrorist proxies, in this instance Israel with Iran? Spread your influence to Israel in order to help a terrorist proxy in Hamas politically, which is what you're doing. Like, it makes no sense. Like, fuck the UN. Like, what do the fucking UN know? They're fucking hopeless. Like, they ignore more than half of the world's horrible fucking crimes, just in terms of Islam and that sort of thing, and then they attempt to censor and do all sorts of other horrible shit. Like, what, are you going to appeal to the authority of the UN, are you? You, after, you know, you directly got into a confrontation with Joe Rogan for criticising the credentials of people. Like, okay. I mean, it makes you fucking bit of a hypocrite, Dave Smith, but alright, whatever. Like, I've never understood Dave Smith's arguments for, you know, his isolationism when it comes to Middle East, Islam, that sort of thing. It's like, he always describes like one or two political figures, what would you say, political intentions, and then he uses that to categorize the whole conflict. It's like, say you've got a forest in front of you, and the forest is a really big problem, you got to get rid of it. Dave would be focusing on a misleading part of one tree of that forest. Like, that's what he's doing in my mind. Like, he's ignoring like several other extremely serious problems to do with Islam, Islamic countries, Islamic terrorism, Islamic proxy terrorism, like the whole lot of it. He's ignoring all of that to focus on one half of US isolationism with regard to war hawks deliberately trying to get the US involved in wars. Like, okay, you're ignoring like 5 other problems there-ish? Like, it's insane to me. So let's, for example, just like play that thought experiment out. You become completely isolationist with everything in the Middle East. You completely ignore it, you pull out all your troops, you don't maintain any influence in the region. What happens? Well, bunch of Islamic countries take over, possibly with Russian influence, possibly with Chinese communist influence. They then take care of all the minorities in their countries, and they develop either Shia or Sunni states, which then war against each other, proliferate to nuclear war against each other. Eventually one of those wins. Okay, what happens then? Then you have in the Middle East an united caliphate sort of Islamic empire in an oil-rich region, and you've, because of the shit leftist politicians in our country, we've already mass imported a bunch of different Islamic people, so we're very susceptible to internal terrorism. We would then be at war immediately just because we're a Christian nation with this Islamic empire. Okay, do you really want to ignore that? Because, like, it's nearly 1-to-1 with Christians and Muslims in the world at the moment. Like, It's just silly. Like, oh, I get it. Non-interventionist, yeah. Noble in principle. In practice, it means you're at war with another country, though.
Brace the shockwave.
Eventually.
Impressive yield.